in the remnants of the Roman Forum, the main street, which was the street called the Via Triumphalis, and was the place where all of the tribute would come into the city. It runs right down the center of the Forum. In the midst of it, there's a certain point where part of the street is lost because of a little shrine of rock that goes and intercedes into the street. And there's a hole in the middle of it that looks down towards the earth. And tradition has it that this was the umbilical cord of the Mother Earth to the city of Rome. And so for the early ancient Romans, this always was a sacred place. It surely bespeaks the fact of the unique role always that women had played, especially within Roman culture. Within Roman culture and society, women had as many rights, and in some instances even more rights, than the men did. That's not the way it was in the Hebrew life, a way of thinking and acting. And so many of the things that we see, both in the scriptures and in turn, specifically in the experience of the early church, really were kind of countercultural to what had been the case within the Hebrew tradition. Scholars, for example, speaking about the fact that it is a woman, Mary Magdalene, who was the first witness of the resurrection, says that of itself bespeaks the authenticity of it happening, because in a society and culture where women are seen as second-class citizens, you wouldn't use one of them as a witness to the most key pivotal moment in the experience of the community. And yet precisely that is what we are given, because the early church recognized this is the truth, this is the fact, you take it or leave it. A few days ago, as we were listening to the segment of the letter of Timothy, we saw as he gave the attributes of deacons that there were allusions to potentially women deacons who were present in the early church. And we see here today as well in this gospel text another reminder to us of how important the role was of women within that society of Jesus' sphere of influence. It is Mary and Martha, for example, that he spends much time with, as well as his friend Lazarus. It is his mother Mary who, in the account of John, initiates the ministry of Jesus by encouraging him to help the bridegroom at this wedding feast at Cana. And it is the women who are present at the very terrible moment of crucifixion, and also they who are present at the very beginning of what they thought was the burial of the Lord. And today we hear the names of a couple others. Mary Magdalene is mentioned again, but also Joanna and Susanna, and we're told there were many others as well, who interestingly provided the resources to sustain and support and nourish the apostles in their ministry. It shows us indeed the very pivotal role women played early on. And the church, in the course of its history, has kind of vacillated back and forth as to what specifically the significance of women are in the church. And we're beginning to see again, I think, a kind of a reawakening of not something that's brand new, something that has deep roots in the early tradition of the church community, but something which in a sense has been forgotten. And so as we continue to recognize the gifts that are given by all members of God's people, both male and female, we remember in a special way those that have been given to us by the females of the church, and right down to giving of faith. For all of us, undoubtedly, it was our mothers that were the means by which we came to believe and sustained and supported us in that faith.